Throughout history, freethinkers have outraged the religious with their wacky ideas about the virtues of free speech, reason, and of course, eating babies. Now, God is dying, and it's time to dispose of his remains. From the pits of hell, Satan sends two puppets of the imperialist West and the Zionist Jews against God, Islam, and tiny kittens to bring you their propaganda and conspire for a new world order. This is Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment with Ali Rizvi and Armin Navabi.
Welcome everybody to another episode of Secular Jihadists for a Muslim Enlightenment. My name is Ali Rizvi, and with me is the great Armin Navabi. Armin, welcome. Welcome. Well, hello. Good to see you.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Okay, we've got Susanna here. We've got Mars.
Yeah.
Hold on, let me mute this. Okay, and then, yeah, sorry about that brief echo. So, yeah, everybody, this is a topic that's really interesting right now. What's happening? It's unfortunately been following the news in the U.S. and all the stuff that's going on over there. You know, you're not really reading about this a whole lot. But recently, Emmanuel Macron of France, the president of France, he delivered a speech where he was talking about separatism in France's Muslim community. So he's worrying about the quote ghettoization of the Muslim community in France. France has approximately like 9% Muslim population there, and he called Islam, quote, a religion that is in crisis all over the world, end quote. And we're going to get into the speech, the context of it, the backlash to it. Actually, he got especially strong backlash from Turkey's the leader of Turkey is Recep Tayyip Erdogan, so we'll talk about it because there's a little bit more that's been going on between these two leaders. So yeah, we're going to get into that this episode and get into the details of it. But first, just before we do that, we have a quick housekeeping announcement here that Armin Navabi and our Secular Jihadist Twitter account have both been suspended. So Twitter has suspended both of us. It's obviously it's frustrating, but Armin, I don't know. Do you want to say anything about it?
Jai Shri Ram? I don't know.
So that gives you a clue to why it happened. I mean, they're basically this is another problem with the algorithms for Twitter and Facebook and YouTube as well, is that you have these people who mass report. I mean, they have organized scripts. They've got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people who mass report things, and then these platforms take it down, and the appeal process takes ages, and this has happened over and over again. So it is something that we have to fix, but this is just, we're going to get back to the topic right now, and we'll talk about this a little bit more in a future episode. But if there is anybody out there, if anybody over here is listening who knows anyone who Twitter or who works at Facebook who can help us out for a situation like this, because we anticipate, especially with Armin's the last me initiative that we're taking on, would be fantastic if we could actually have develop some contacts.
All right, let's get to the Islam being in crisis and all.
Right. So Armin, this is a speech that was done. Let's see, when was this? This is actually very recent. It's this month.
Very recent. Yes.
Yeah.
No, just like not even a week.
Not even a week, yeah. So last week, France has a very, very strong tradition of secularism. They had in 1905. They have this act in their constitution. They have a law that really firmly establishes.
Wait. Before you go to the history, let's just not bury the lead. Like, this is the reason why this was extraordinary is because you have it's one of the leaders that is symbol of not both neither far left or crazy right leaning
centrist.
You got one of the symbols of sane left or sane liberal. One of the main symbols of that, all of a sudden coming out of we need to cut out, we need to talk about Islam. All right. So the great thing about that is that what we've seen so far for a long time is that, again, I know that the policies and the ground is different, but when it comes to symbolism, it seems like you had right leaning, maybe Eastern European leaders, or you had far right leaders from India, and then you have the whole China anti-Muslim. You had the crazy far right anti-Muslim bigotry kind of narrative, or people who are just anti-immigration as a whole, or stuff like that. And then you had the so-called liberal world coming in and saying, no, like Islam is great, and yeah, everything is fine. This anything against Islam is bigotry, and we didn't have like really anything. I mean, we did have some good policies, especially from France, but we didn't have any form of a leader that a lot of people look up to. And I know a lot of people are also against them, but there's also people who look up to as an alternative to like Trump or other leaders. They say
Marine Le
like, oh,
Pen.
this is like Marine Le Pen. Yeah, exactly. They say like this is a sane. This is how civilized. This is how the civilized world works. This is how the leadership that we could look up to, that is civil, that is responsible, that is nuanced conversations, telling people exactly what the problem is. So people look up to that as, especially in the world today where everything seems to gone to crap. Again, I can't say SHIT because we're trying to keep monetized, but it seems like people keep remembering Obama, like, oh my God, how great things, how people civil and nuanced and more. The conversations were a lot better during Obama, or stuff like that. And people look up to people like Macron as leaders of how great things could be. Again, I'm not saying whether they're right or wrong, because I know a lot of people don't like the yellow jackets and all that stuff. I know, okay, but now we have somebody that represents all of that. That people in this world, that the leaders seems to go crazy. People look up to Macron as a symbol, like, guys, look, please give us some liberal sanity, okay? And this guy is coming out and openly saying, yeah, Islam is tearing us apart. like we have a crisis with Islam, and not just in France, but on a global scale. So this like really helps normalize discussing the problem of Islam not just among activists, but it actually opens the door for a whole bunch of other leaders to be like, talking about Islam in this way, that's not it's not a Trump thing, it's not like Hungary thing, or it's not like
It's not a bigotry thing either.
it's not a Poland thing. It's not like one of these leaders. It's not like these illiberal or right leaning. This is a problem, right? So him talking about it so candidly and so directly, I think, just even if it doesn't go anywhere, has just normalized and sets a precedent for other more liberal leaders to be able to address Islam as an issue that we need to talk about. It just is, it's just so good. I mean, I
Yeah,
think just doing that speech on its own has made us go years ahead in like just talking about it. Like I think that one speech by Macron has done years worth of activism in normalizing this discussion. But go
and I
ahead.
want to add to it, like I think the way that he did it was also great. First of all, he didn't pull any punches. He said, quote, so I'll read out some quotes from what he said. He described Islam as, quote, a religion that is in crisis all over the world today, right? Which is absolutely true. I mean, that's something that we've been talking about a lot. We come from parts of the world. We've featured people from different parts of the world who have been, evidence of that, like whether we've talked about polls and all kinds of data showing exactly what he's saying. He talked about that Islam was in crisis due to, quote, an extreme hardening of positions. He talked about Islamic separatism in France. And he also said Islam in France must be freed from foreign influence. So he doesn't have a problem. He wants the Islam Muslims and French to be French just like anybody else, and to be Muslims as well. But he does not like the foreign influence that's coming in that is trying to corrupt it. Moreover, what he said was, quote, secularism is a cement of a united France. Let us not fall into the trap laid by extremists who aim to stigmatize all Muslims. Right. And this to me is really important because he is making that distinction that we've talked about here, like probably millions of times, is that criticizing Islam and seeing the problems with Islamic ideology is not the aim of that. Like when we do that, that's not to stigmatize all Muslims. He's making a distinction between Muslims as people, as a community, versus Islam, right? And the people
Well,
who actually
I
really take it
mean,
seriously.
to be fair, I would still criticize him. I mean, this me being too picky, and I wouldn't expect him to ever say that. But obviously, he kept on saying radical Islam or political Islam. By
Yeah.
the way, Ali, I'll reduce my volume a little bit, Ali.
Mhm.
He he, obviously, if we were talking about it, I wouldn't say radical Islam, I wouldn't say political Islam, I would just say Islam, right?
Yeah.
But again, that's too high of an expectation for me, for a leader like that to be able to come and say like, oh, the problem is Islam. Okay, so that's to me being too picky, so I'm not going to do that. But yeah, so he did. And to me, it seemed like his main concern. Ali, I'm still getting echo. Can you reduce my volume
I
even
can. I
more?
mean, even if I mute it, I think the echo is unrelated to that.
All right, no. Um, no, I don't think so, but it's okay. The impression I get is that the issue is like there seems to be two Frances right now, right? Like it seems like to be a growing. Again, I've been to France, I think three times, and my last visit was very. I noticed that things are changing compared to the first two, right? And I've been to the Muslim areas of France as well, and it just seems like you're entering a different country, right? And I understand it's only 8 to 9% of the population, but this is like an 8 to 9% of the population that has very different values from the rest of society, and you don't get that impression of Muslims in United States and Canada, right? The Muslims in United States and Canada, again, not all. I'm not generalizing, but more Muslims in United States and Canada feel like they're American or they're Canadian, and they want to be American. They want to be Canadian, but there's a higher percentage of Muslims in UK and especially in France that I feel like they just don't see as this is their country. This is not a country for them. They don't feel French, and they feel like their country is based on it's not their country, but this country that they're in. Even though they're born there and they're raised there, they feel like this is their in foreign land and they're different kind of citizens, and they abide by a completely different set of values compared to what this country that they're in values, right? And it's basically it seems like a separatist movement in a sense, and that is exactly what he called it, and is what Macron is worried about, right?
Yeah.
And this is not, so it's not just about foreign influence; it's about the level of segregation that exists between Muslims in France and compared to the rest of society. And he wants to address that. And for example, one thing he wants to touch on is like homeschooling. Like he thinks these. He says like these are our citizens. Like he doesn't want to alienate these people. He doesn't want to push them aside as others. He wants to include them in. These are not. It's not about immigration. It's also these are people that are born in France, and what he wants is what he wants them to feel like they're part of this country, that they are. That they integrate with the rest of society, and these kids that are being born of Muslim people, he doesn't want them to be raised in this isolated communities in bubbles, completely separate from the values that made France a better country compared to other countries. And he wants to see how he could like save these baby French people, tiny French people from Muslim. I don't want to call them baby.
What do you
Like
do
these
with
are our
tiny
citizens.
French people?
Yeah, because I don't want to call them baby Muslims, right? Because they're not Muslims. They're just born like these are like he's like guys. These are our citizens. You can't just isolate them. You just because they came out of your body, that doesn't mean you own them, right? This is our citizens, and they need to. You can't isolate them from the rest of France, and we need to. So what he's trying to do is like limit homeschooling, right? Because
Yeah.
he's noticing that they're being raised in tiny bubbles and they're not being exposed to the values that the rest of society has. And again, so here's another thing I want to point to is that if you look at so first of all, I just want to finish that thought. He's like these are French citizens, right? And you cannot if you don't avoid exclude them from learning the things that they need to learn, this is a disservice to the citizens that we need to protect, right? This is how I see it, right? I think the government has a responsibility to making sure that just because you're a parent, that doesn't mean that you could exclude certain important teachings, important information that makes your a child be able to function better in a society, right? You don't have every right to your child, right? The government is responsible for stepping in and making sure that they have the information they need to become a healthy part of the society, right? A functioning part of a healthy society. But yeah, go on, Ali. You wanted to say something?
Yeah. So I wanted to actually
Oh,
talk about put some quotes to what you said, based
oh,
on
okay. So before,
yeah.
really quickly, I'm gonna forget this if I don't say it. Oh yeah. So I also want to point out that I consume a lot of. Can you mute yourself because I'm hearing echo? I hear a lot. I consume a lot of like far right content creators and also more wokey type content creators. And I always notice that they're looking at the same event and they keep interpreting it in completely different ways, right? And they all exaggerate, right? So one thing I noticed from the far right people is that they keep thinking like, oh yeah, like Europe has fallen, right? These are Sharia countries now. Like this is like Islam is going to take over France and Islam is going to take over the UK. This is going to be like they're going to have, the Islamic flag flying over the, they're just and it's so those exaggerations exist, and unfortunately because they exaggerate that, and people see that, and then they go look at actual data and see like, yeah, they're just like the numbers don't support that. Then they think that any concern that people like me or you have, Ellie, they must be unjustified because they see the far right exaggeration, and they think like, oh, you guys are just one of them, right? But if you actually look at the real numbers, I mean, 8 to 9%, and even lower than that. That's huge. That's huge. Like it doesn't have to be as bad as these far right people make it seem like to be. But even 5%. These people are citizens and they can vote, right? And they have and because they're segregated, like they're not like the Muslims in Canada and U.S., right? A lot of them, at least they are a lot more homophobic. They are very misogynistic. They are anti-secularism. They have views against free speech, right? And even a 5%, even a 5% difference. How do you think elections work? Elections work on sometimes 1, 2, 3% differences, right? And again, if it's 8% now, and I'm not going to exaggerate like the far right people, and I'm going to say like, oh, it's going to be like one day they're going to have Sharia ruling over France or anything like that. But if it gets to like 9%, 10%, these absolutely changes the values of the country if when these people can vote, right? Of course, 10% is going to make a huge difference in the direction, the values that France is going to celebrate as a country and push for in the country. Of course, even 1 or 2% can make a huge difference. So this is a major threat to a country that is the birthplace of Enlightenment values. The country that is the birthplace of Enlightenment value that has made the whole world a better place because of the popularization of these ideas, has now up to 8% of its population living in isolation and celebrating ideas that is in direct opposition to the ideas that this country is responsible for. And if that is not a concern, if you think like that is not a concern, I don't know what else to tell you. But go on, Ali.
Yeah. So there's certain other things that you said. So a couple of things that Armin talked about is about the kids who are being homeschooled. So there are about 50,000 children in France who are educated at home. Okay, and so many of these are people of minority faiths like Islam and so on. So what Macron is going to do is he is going to be requiring them to attend school with their fellow students. He is going to be stressing the importance of schools, instilling secular values in young people, right, in public schools, and the government would also require private schools to agree to teach them. So a lot of this has to do with the funding, foreign funding of mosques and the kind of things that are being taught in schools, as Armin talked about. The other thing that he acknowledged, and this is actually a really big thing for a liberal, generally, I mean, he's a center-left kind of guy, he's for someone like this to acknowledge is this idea of I guess you would call it integration, or what they call um, diversity versus assimilation, right? Where he's talking about how it's important for communities to integrate, like especially with these kids, right, that are growing up in France. So, and he accepted responsibility for it. So he said that the French state was partly responsible for the quote ghettoization of communities. And this exact word, the ghettoization of ethnic communities, is something that I mean, you'll find it in my book. It's something that Armin and I and many of us have been talking about for years and years and years. As something, this was our main critique of the whole multiculturalism thing. I mean, there are many good things about multiculturalism, but this is one of the things that is actually objectively bad. Okay, so it causes a lot of problems downstream, and many immigrants actually agree with this. They don't like these sort of ethnic ghettos that are formed in these new immigrant communities. So yeah, the ghettoization. So he acknowledged this, and he actually acknowledged the French responsibility, saying that that non-secular organizations actually ended up stepping in, like religious organizations set up this. They stepped in to make up for the failings of France's integration policy. So he said, "quote Where we stepped away, they stepped in." And this is, to me at least, Armin, this is music to my ears, because I don't know how many times we've written about this in the last 10, 15 years. I don't know how many times we've talked about it, how this has been a huge issue. So I mean, you hear like far right people speaking to their echo chambers about this, right? And people resist it. But to have somebody like Macron, who, by the way, is like BFFs with Obama, who's one of these guys, to come up and acknowledge these issues, the fact that liberal people, their failure to address these issues honestly from a position of of outreach and from a good faith position, has allowed far right communities, ultra religious communities, to come in and try to hijack this issue and co-opt it and step in and do that from a position of xenophobia, bigotry, from extremism, like religious extremism, and so on. And then finally, one more thing, Armin. He also acknowledged in the same speech that he talked about France's colonial past. So this is a big thing for liberals, right? Because one of the things that drives them to just disproportionately protect minority communities that with values that are actually antithetical to what they believe, one of the reasons they protect it is because of this colonial guilt. So he did acknowledge it. So he actually said that the colonial past France had, including like its colonization of Algeria, he said it, quote, left scars on the society. And he said again, quote, we have not unpacked our past. We have grandparents who have passed their scars onto their children, end quote. So one of the beautiful things about the speech is not only did he acknowledge head on the problem about Islam and the crisis that it has, all over the world, and he was honest about it, but he also talked about all of the different issues and all of the other factors that also go into it, that go into this, including things that he feels that France is partly responsible for. And that's very important, because when you acknowledge you're responsible for something, that's something that you can address. That's something you can do something about. Right? So again, his initiative with what he wants to do with schools and education, his initiative, what he wants to do with cracking down on funding from like foreign funding for mosques and things like that in France. All of this is part of the big story. So it was, I think it was a very well thought out, very well intentioned speech that came from a place of good faith. Now there are political aspects of this too, but we'll get into that next. But that's kind of the way I look at it. So I was actually very encouraged with the way that he spoke about it. It really was something that we'd been wanting to hear from a good center-left leader for a very long time.
One thing that I've been saying, and I think Ali has been agreeing, is the best way to fight Islam is to befriend Muslims, right? And the more you demonize Muslims, the more you isolate them, the more you ostracize them, and the more you oppress them, you're basically pushing them into creating their own communities, and for them to become more and more radicalized, and for them to be more isolated, to be exposed from ideas that actually could make them live better lives, for them to go back to relying more on Islam and rely more on an Islamic community rather than everyone as a whole. And accept, but befriending them and welcoming them into society will expose them to ideas superior to Islam, and even if they don't leave Islam, they will become less influenced by Islam, right? And I think this whole Macron even acknowledging that this is a failure, which is something that, by the way, I watch also a lot of Islamic channels, and their reviews on this. They don't highlight these parts, right? They don't highlight Macron saying that there's mistakes that we've made. Like, nope, they don't highlight that. They don't highlight the parts that he says that we shouldn't be demonizing Muslims, or that this is like the radicals are like a minority part of the Muslim community. No, because they want to also demonize Macron for even daring to say anything against Islam. So when they reviewed this news, they were very careful not to mention any parts that might make him look good to their Muslim audience. So that was kind of slimy in my opinion. Yeah. So and another thing is that one thing Ali mentioned with regards to the foreign money coming in, and this is an issue that really needs to be addressed, right? Because and the thing is, I don't know what the solution to this is, because the political, like countries like Iran, Germany, no, sorry, Iran in Canada, United States, Iran's influence in Canada, United States, and Germany, or in France, or Turkey, especially in Germany. Okay, so the countries like Iran, Turkey, Saudi Arabia, and now even Malaysia now, what they do is they spend a lot of money to try to get political influence in these other countries, but but a lot of that would not be legal, right? But the way to do that is to, instead of opening political institutions or organizations, you make religious ones, because if you have for example, Iran has managed to create a lot of hubs and centers of influence in a lot of Western European and North American countries by creating schools in Shia Islam, or places that for celebrating Hussein. And there's no way under the laws to stop that, because there's supposed to be absolute freedom of religious expression, right? So this is a very easy way for them to be like, well, this is not political. This is just so for example, most of the mosques in Germany are, from Turkey. And, Saudi Arabia can keep, Saudi Arabia is much less than Turkey is stepping in where Saudi Arabia failed. But again, you could build mosques, you could build madrasas, and all of these would be completely religious. So these will be used for political political reasons, but on the face of it, they're purely religious organizations, right? So, but the thing is that, somebody like Macron is saying we see what you're doing. This cannot, you could pretend that this is just religion, but you wouldn't be funding all these centers in Western Europe and North America only for spreading religion. Come on. But I don't exactly know how you can stop that, because again, you don't even have to have any political discussion for you to be able to create a huge base that is loyal to Iran's center influence or Turkey's influence, just by funding religious organizations. Even though if you don't give them any political agenda, people's religious allegiances will just automatically, a lot of times, again, not all, but match with their political allegiances. So you don't even have to tell them what political who they need to be politically allied to. If you're Shia and you're being funded from Iran to build Shia centers, just pushing for that, even without any direct messaging from Tehran telling you that you need to be loyal to Vilayat al-Faqih, to the mullahs in Tehran, you're just going to get that. you're just going to get that. You're going to get that loyalty. You're going to get that influence, even without any smoking gun that actually could direct these people to getting any orders from Tehran, right? Same thing with Turkey. Same thing with other foreign governments. So I don't exactly know how you could stop that, because again, they don't have to have any of these discussions don't have to be political. So what would you do to stop that? I don't know. Ali, do you have any solution to that? Because I didn't see anything in his speech. He said that he just mentioned that this is a concern, but he didn't offer any solutions. What do you think? You're muted.
I don't know. I kind of agree with you on this. So I'm kind of
All
listening.
right.
I agree with everything. But
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, go on. I have other
No,
things
no,
to say, but you could go.
no. If you have something to say it. I actually want to move on to
To
Erdogan.
Turkey. Yeah.
Response to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So one last thing before we move to Turkey is one thing we need to be concerned about is not let the right, the far right. Again, I don't want to use the far right and right interchangeably. They're very, 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 very different. Okay, so please, like, if I ever come across like I'm using far right and right wing differently, even though I'm not right wing, but I do not see right leaning people as crazy as far right leaning people. Okay, like there's a lot of sane people on right. Just the same thing I do with the left. I do not, like a lot of people on the right, kind of use woke and left leaning interchangeably. But again, that's very different as well. So, but when it comes to far right people, let's say, or yeah, I don't know what the best terminology is for this right now, but let's say for far right people, right? A lot of them might say, look at Macron right now, and we shouldn't let them do this, okay? They might come out and say that, look, see, we were right, and you guys are only realizing this, right? And we shouldn't let them get that narrative, because this is completely different, okay? This is an ideological battle, and I like that Macron is keeping it an ideological battle. This is not an anti-Muslim fight that Macron is fighting. This is actually a pro-Muslim. This is, this is in the interest of the Muslim community. I mean, Muslims in France will have better lives if they get integrated with the rest of society, if they're not isolated, if they learn to accept some of the values that is normal in France, right? They will get to be able to participate in the economy a lot easier. They get to be able to enjoy be close to all of France, not just Muslim France, right? This will improve not just their lives, but the lives of their children. Their children will grow with the right skill sets and with the right social skills to be able to function better in France, okay? So this is not an anti-Muslim position. So if the far right people want to come and say, steal this narrative, or like I noticed like some Hindutva people saying like, see, this is what India is doing right. So France is like way behind Hindutva. Like, no, this is not at all the same, right? This is not just for the sake of France, but this is also for the sake of Muslim French people, right? And this is not at all an anti-Muslim position. This is an ideological battle, and this is not at all what Hindutva is doing, and this is not at all what the anti-Muslim bigots are pushing for. So
But it's the exact opposite of
It's the
religious
exact
nationalism. Yeah.
yeah, it's the exact
It's not
opposite.
nationalistic religion.
This is secularism, not fighting Islam with something, not fighting one bad idea with another bad idea, right? So if you do notice them saying like, okay, so this shows that we were right, do not let them get away with that narrative. But go on, Ali, you want to move to Turkey?
Let me unmute. Okay, yeah. And then, so I want to talk about, so what happened is that this actually got a very strong response from Turkey. And I think really just, I don't think there was, it seems like there was a backlash. There were probably some backlash from Muslims everywhere, but it really seems like Erdogan was the main guy who really spoke up about this. That's what really made the headlines. And he just went completely hyperbolic on this. And I think and we're going to talk about the reason for it. It's probably more political. They've been at loggerheads, Erdogan and Macron, for quite a while now. It's for several months. And we'll get into some of those issues. But so this is what he said. He called these comments about that Macron made about this, Islam being in a crisis all over the world as, quote, open provocation. Okay. So when Macron was saying, we want to liberate Islam in France from foreign influences, which is actually a really good phrase. Like, he's actually talking about liberating Islam. He's like, we want to free Islam from these foreign influences that are corrupting it. I mean, it's something.
I mean, I don't like that
Of course,
wording, but again,
yeah.
I'm not going to be picky because this is better than what we have ever gotten for a very long time. But I could be picky about these words like liberate Islam for it to be corrupted. No, Islam is the corrupting agent. But again, I'm not going to be that nitpicky about it. This is good.
That's us. So, when we talk on the podcast and when we're having a debate or whatever, we're going to speak in these terms. But when you're a politician, right, and you want to fight this issue, then I mean, this is actually the way to go. So, so Erdogan, when he said this, he said that he said, quote, "Who are you to talk about the structuring of Islam?" He called him impertinent. He said that we expect Macron to pay more attention when talking about issues that he is ignorant about. He said that we expect him to act as a responsible statesman rather than act like a colonial governor. So there has been a bit of a thing that Erdogan has had in for Macron for a while, and it's due to a few other reasons too. So there's a sort of a territorial issue that they're having over the waters, and between Greece, between Athens and Ankara, like between Turkey and Greece, they've been fighting over the water over there about property because Turkey has been drilling there for gas, right, underwater, and Greece has been trying to fight back, and France has been supporting Greece. So there has been this dispute over there. So they've been fighting about that since, I don't know, a year, a little bit more. There's also the recent fighting, and I mean, it's been going on for a while, the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia. So Armenia and Azerbaijan have been kind of fighting with each other for a while. Azerbaijan is a majority Shia Muslim country that is allied with Turkey. It's officially secular, and Turkey has been supporting Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan has a small community of Armenians in that what's that disputed area called, Armin?
But
Yeah.
But by the way, this whole thing is between Azerbaijan and Armenian is from my perspective. One aspect of it is very bizarre, is because for the first time in my life, I think, in my life, yes, because before my life, Iran and Israel are on the same side of this. Iran and Israel are on the same side of this is the first conflict since my birth that Israel and Iran are supporting the same side. They're just supporting the same side of the conflict. But go on.
So they're supporting Azerbaijan and Turkey?
Yep, Turkey, Iran, and Israel are on the same side of this conflict.
Why is Israel on the Azerbaijan side?
Well, Israel has been trying to. Well, it goes back to Iran. It always goes back to Iran. So the suspicion is that, other than I think the main groups after the Kurds in Iran that are separatists are the Turks, right? So these are the Azeris, right? And we have so Azerbaijan is a country, but there's also a province in Iran called Azerbaijan, which was like a very strategic mistake for you to name that Azerbaijan, that province Azerbaijan, after the country that is neighboring to it, right? So that just really encourages a lot more separatist movements. But I think Israel is very interested in encouraging separatist movements in Iran. And a lot of Azeris in Iran see themselves as part of Azerbaijan as a country rather than Iran. And they are pushing for separating from Iran. So the reason, I think, again, you correct me if I'm wrong, I think the reason why Israel is supporting Azerbaijan is the exact opposite reason why Iran is supporting Azerbaijan, right? Because historically, Iran is on Armenian side, right? So this was bizarre for a lot of people, a lot of analysts, even in Iran, were like, what the hell's going on? Why is Iran switching sides? I think Iran is becoming weaker in controlling its separatist movements. And I think they're trying to appease people now instead of forcing them to stop, right? So is Iran is like supporting Azerbaijan makes a lot of Azeris in Iran support like me be a little bit more less aggressive against Iran's government, right? Because they
Mm.
see like, oh wow, the Iran's government is on the right side of this, right? So I think like Iran is like kind of Iran's government is kind of scared into making the Azeris even more angry than they are right now. So I think that's the political calculus, and not to encourage more separate. So basically, Israel is supporting Azerbaijan to maybe use the separatists in Iran to push back against Iran, and Iran is supporting Azerbaijan to calm them down a little bit, to like tell them to be like, look guys, we're on the right side, please like don't
So
attack. So
Azerbaijan is actually overwhelmingly Shia, right? Shia majority.
I think so, yeah, let me
But
double check that.
are they Ethnoshri Shia or
Yeah, I think so. Hold on, I'm not sure actually.
interesting? Okay, so yeah, because I actually don't know that much about the demographics. Um,
um
but anyway, yeah. So
yeah
look that up. But
yeah, 3/5, yeah, 3/5 is Shia, 1/3 is Sunni. But
one third is
again,
Shia.
that's not, yeah. So that would make a lot of people might think that, and that would make them a natural ally to Iran. But blood is thicker than water, and sometimes ethnicity is becomes more of an issue than religion.
Yeah, it seems in 2012, Israel was actually granted access to air bases in Azerbaijan. Um, to
Yeah,
potentially use against Iran's nuclear program. I don't know. Okay, so there you
yeah,
go. This is that region. Okay, so we
yeah.
don't know. This is another whole issue over this. So
Should we do an episode on that or no? Like, yeah. Well,
I,
let us
I
know. Let us know if you want us to do an episode on that. But go.
yeah, for me personally, this is absolutely fascinating, but it's also new to me. It's something that I didn't really focus on a whole lot before, so I don't know how many people would genuinely be interested in it, but I would be happy to do it. I'm totally down with it.
Alex, we're gonna
So
address that question soon. But go on, Ali.
yeah, so I mean, basically, that there's that separatist region in Azerbaijan called Nagorno Karabakh, right? Say, and this is the place where there's a small group of Armenians, and they have been wanting to secede, and they've been wanting to, and that really is the focus of the conflict. And most recently, what happened was France has accused Erdogan of funneling jihadists from Syria through Turkey into Azerbaijan to fight against Armenia. And France is on the side of Armenia, and Turkey's on the side of Azerbaijan. So there's been that thing going on between them. There's been the
But
territorial waters. Um,
secretly, without officially saying it, both Iran's government, and Turkey see current Azerbaijan today as part of their future borders, empires,
yeah,
right? So both Iranian nationalists and the Iranian government, who don't see eye to eye, right now they see eye to eye in this. Like they say, one day current Azerbaijan is going to be part of Iran, and Turkey also. Turkey as well. Like, no, these are Turks. These are our people. We're gonna, oh, dude. There's Turks that think they're gonna one day liberate Tabriz from Iran, and Tabriz is gonna be part of Turkey one day. That's what they think.
yeah,
So
fascinating.
it's crazy. But go on.
Yeah, so I mean that's basically it. So there's a background, there's a political background. These guys have been like trading barbs for a little while with each other. So this was a great opportunity for Erdogan to try and see if he can unite the Muslim world against Emmanuel Macron, and paint him as some sort of like serious Islamophobe. But it doesn't seem to really be catching ground. And I think that's kind of what I want to talk about next with you, Armin, is that so, we had the Charlie Hebdo attacks in 2015. That was obviously brutal. Then, the trial happened, and there was this guy, the Pakistani guy, went out and stabbed two people. And, a lot of things have changed. I mean, the focus isn't really that much on it. I mean, people have become very desensitized, and they've kind of normalized a lot of the blasphemy against Islam because it's become so ubiquitous around the world, right? And especially on the internet, and all these ex-Muslim communities, and people, and the rise of the far right. I mean, the criticizing Islam and everything has become very, very mainstream compared to what it was
Yeah.
like just literally 5 to 15 years
Unlike
ago.
Unlike criticizing Hinduism, apparently.
Yeah,
Like,
that's the next nut we gotta crack.
I don't, I don't lose my accounts for criticizing Islam anymore. I lose my accounts for for criticizing Hinduism. So
Yeah,
this is we need to move forward. We need to move against that, normalize that. That's the
eastward,
next. Yes, yes.
eastward and back
Um,
in time.
but a lot of Muslims are frustrated by this, by the way, and this is where Turkey steps in because Turkey thinks like the Muslim like is trying to show that it's
The representative.
yeah, it's the new defender of Islam and Muslims
Mhm.
across not in Turkey but globally,
Yeah.
right? So, and again, this is exactly. By the way, I'm hearing a little bit echo. It's okay.
Yeah.
But so Turkey wants to step in where Saudi Arabia was supposed to be. Like, I mean, Saudi Arabia had such an easy case, right? Like, we're the guardians of the two holy cities, Medina and Mecca. We are the country, the birthplace of Muhammad. I mean, if we're not the leaders of Islam, the Sunni world, who else? So it was supposed to be the Saudi Arabia being ever since 1979 Islamic Revolution. It was supposed to be Saudi Arabia, the the leader of the Sunni world, and Iran being the leader of the Shia world. And Iran did a very good job at, I know, again, not all. I know Shias are going to be like, I mean, no, if the Vilayat Faqih in Iran doesn't represent us. Yeah. But overall, the Iranian government did a very, very good job at making it seem like they're, effectively, politically, they are, to a large extent, the leaders in the geopolitics in the Shia world. Again, not everybody, but largely so. And Saudi Arabia failed. Saudi Arabia tried to export its ideology beyond its border, just like Iran did, and built madrasas all across the world. And what they did backfired, and a lot of all those people that they created, radicals that they created, now they want to behead the Saudis, right? So they created a Frankenstein monster that is now turning on themselves, right? And they have zero control, zero. The dog that they bred, they don't have the leash. It just ran over. But the Shias the Shia proxies that Iran built across the world, they're very loyal to Tehran, unlike the ones that Saudi Arabia built. Right? And again, the whole Islamic world, they do not. The Shias in Canada, they look to Iran for funding. They look to Iran for support. Right? But the Sunnis around the world, they do not look to Saudi Arabia. They condemn Saudi Arabia. All right. Saudi Arabia wanted to have its cake and eat it too. It wanted to be like, oh, we're the leader of Muslims around the world, and we also want to be close to United States. And for a long time, that was their thing. And people were like, what the hell? How could you be close to the United States and think like you're representing the Islamic world? And now they're like, oh yeah, by the way, we're going to be close to Israel as well. So basically, that seemed to be like the end of the pretending of representing the Islamic world when you become buddies with Israel, right? And then, so when it comes to like issues like China like putting more than 1 million Muslims in concentration camps, a country like Saudi Arabia not only did not go out to say like, yeah, we condemn this, they sent a congratulation letter to China for doing such a great job at fighting against radicalism. Saudi Arabia, that's supposed to be like the representative of Muslims around the world, officially congratulated China for doing something, not just commenting, like officially letter congratulating China for the great job they're doing in fighting back against radicalism, right? So Muslims like, yeah, no. For a long time they were like this, but now it seems like Saudi Arabia is not even trying anymore, right? And that's why Turkey is doing it. Turkey was like, we want to be like Iran, but for Sunnis. And I think Turkey is a bit frustrated that Iran manages to have such a tight control over Shia influence around the world. But for some reason, Iran is going beyond Shias, and is also doing a great job at controlling Sunni, having an influence on Sunnis around the world because of the Israel-Palestinian situation. Because all these Arab leaders are not defending Palestine against Israel. In fact, they're becoming closer to Israel. And the Muslims are noticing that it's Iran that is pretending to defend Palestinians against Israel, right? So a lot of Sunnis were becoming allied with Iran as well, and looking for Iran's political and financial support rather than these Arab countries. And Turkey's like, guys, if you don't want these Arab leaders, at least look to Sunni leaders. Like you don't have to, you don't need Arab leaders, but we are like Turkey is at least Sunni. Like Palestine is Sunni and Turkey is Sunni. We are going to be the champions. Like they want to. So basically, Turkey wants to recreate the Ottoman influence that they had, right? And become the, how they were the, for the Ottoman Empire was basically the caliphate of the main authority over all the Islamic world, not just Turkish people, but all of Islam, right? And they kind of they have this vision. By the way, they're open about this. And this is not something that you have to read in between the lines, right? They want to bring back the Ottoman Empire. So Iran wants to bring back the, not just the
Persian Empire.
But not just the Safavid Empire that was Shia, but also like go back to the Sassanid, the pre-Islamic Sassanid Empire, right? But the Turks, Turkey thinks like this should be easier for us to do because Iran has like this dualism that it has to deal with in a country because the empire, the ambitions among Iranian to bring back the empire is pre-Islamic, right? So Iran was it was very powerful when it was the pre-Islamic area, right? Some people are trying to sell the Safavid Empire, which was the Shia Empire, to be like maybe we could use that as to create ambitions of empire among Iranians, but not that many people in Iran have this romanticized view of the Safavid dynasty, right? They have this romanticized view of the Sassanid and the Haqamanishi dynasties, right? So that is not at all Islamic. So Iran has this conflict between, okay, if we want to motivate people to feel like it's good for us to go beyond our borders, do we use this nationalistic arguments that is pre-Islamic? But so they have two different narratives that they have to work with. With the Shias, they were like, oh, we're basically making people, we're inviting people to Islam. That's why we need to go beyond our borders. And these are like Shia religious shrines are outside of Iran's borders in Iraq, and basically they have this religious narrative that we need to defend those. But then the most of the country that is not very religious, they have to use they have to tap into their pre-Islamic empire, romanticized view of Iran's empire narratives to try to convince them. So they have to dance this, play this game with their own population and deal with contradicting narratives. Turkey says like, why is Iran doing this so effectively? We don't need to do this. We don't need to play this contradictory narratives because the Ottoman Empire, with the time that Turks were in power, it was when they were Muslim. So it was both a Turkish empire and a Muslim empire. So we could like play into people's nationalist desires and show of strength with their religious show of strength at the same time without seeming like we're competing against our own narratives, right? And we can show to the Muslim world that we are on the right side on all these things. We are anti-Israel. We are pro-Palestinian. Again, that anti-Israeli narrative doesn't work as effectively as in Iran because they still have relationship with Israel, right? But they pretend to at least be anti-Israel. We are pro-Israel. We are pro-Palestine. And we also have taken a strong stance against China, right? So they're and also we're Sunni, goddammit. They're saying, God, you like most of the Muslim world is Sunni, and we're Sunni. So where Saudi Arabia failed, Turkey wants to come in and say like, look, we are it. We are your guardians, or Muslims, okay? And they want to increase their influence, not just to Turkish influence, but all Muslim influence. And this whole coming out and speaking against Macron is part of that entire thing, right? It's part of that entire narrative to come and say like, look, whenever Islam is being attacked, Turkey steps in. But go on.
Yeah, no. So I think that the way that this is actually going to happen, what Macron has announced, is putting this into practice, is going to be the strengthening. Well, they're going to add to the 1905 law. So France has their version of secularism. They call it laïcité. It's this term that actually has a very strict separation of church and state in France. It's a little different from the one in the U.S. because the U.S. still allows for they have religious freedom is a big deal there, but in France, for instance, there was even a lot of debate. I mean, they didn't want any sort of religious symbols. So the hijab, the Sikh turban, Christian crosses, Stars of David, the kippas, the yarmulkes and everything that the Jews wear, all of these, they wanted it banned from public schools. And that did happen in 2004. So they have a more strict, I mean, they're very, very strict about this. And this is not something that is done specifically to target Islam, as it sometimes, you see the laws in Quebec here in Canada, where it was actually motivated by the Islam thing. But that isn't really how it's been historically in France. In fact, they've probably been more accommodating to Islam than to the other religions. And now I think Macron is just making the case that no, this is just like all the other religions. I mean, they should be treated exactly the same. And we have to enforce our secularism. So they're going to be adding to the 1905 law. Macron is sort of the timeline he's given is in December. There's going to be a modification to it where they're going to add these initiatives of public schools, well, not just public, but private schools as well, and bringing a secular education and cracking down on this foreign funding of mosques and things like that. So I think it's really interesting. It'll be a good example to see how this turns out. I think it's the right way to do it. As far as the religious symbols and everything. Excuse me, I had to cough. But
let's make sure that we don't go above 1 hour. So
yeah, let's do that. So we'll just go into. There's a couple of questions and comments here, so let's just go into that.
So these two. I have one more comment to make, but I don't know if I'm gonna have time. So this is the two of the Patreon. By the way, guys, if you're watching this, the audio version of this, that means that you're not you might be, but if you're not a patron and you want to join these live discussions and get your questions in and watch this live with us, the video version of it live with us, check out the link in the description. You could become a patron, and then we'll tell you guys when we go live, so you could join us live. But Alex is a patron, and that's why he's here, and here's the comment. Go on, Ali.
He has a comment, and Alex of Oz is saying, neither religion nor anything else should be allowed so much freedom that it subverts secularism or enlightenment tenets. Right?
I don't know if I agree with that, because I think he's responding to the freedom of religious expression. I think maybe Alex is saying that. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe he's saying like if it's so free that other countries are able to bring in political influence, then that is a freedom that should be limited. I don't know. I do think that if you give the government authority to limit people's expression of ideas, you're creating a bigger problem than the one you're solving. But go on, Ellie.
Sorry, say that again, Norman. What did you say?
I said that if you think the government the authority to limit people's expression of ideas, you're going to create a bigger problem than the one that you're solving.
Yeah, I think it's. I think what he's talking about here about being allowed so much freedom. I actually agree with this comment completely. And I'm going to quote somebody who I don't agree with a whole lot all the time, and that's AOC. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I can see you're going to roll your eyes already. Okay, but here goes. So this is something that she said. I mean, she said this today in the.
No, I'm not rolling my eyes because of her. I'm rolling my eyes because of you asking if I know who she is.
Oh, okay. So she said, quote, "The only time religious freedom is invoked is in the name of bigotry and discrimination, and I'm tired of it." And she said that in response to this new Supreme Court justice.
Okay, but bigotry should also be free.
That's a problem. But this is what he's talking about, is that usually when they talk about religious freedom, right? Recently the Supreme Court of the U.S. is saying that they may reverse the gay marriage thing, the same-sex marriage thing. They're doing it in the name of religious freedom.
Okay,
I think that's what he's talking about.
But bigotry should be allowed if it's coming from private people. Like that's the example that you mentioned. Yeah, no, but
I don't think this.
No, but Alex is saying neither religion nor anything else should be allowed so much freedom that it subverts secularism. I mean, if your secularism and Enlightenment values is being subverted because people are defeating you in spreading your ideas, the solution is not to silence.
No, I think he's talking about official secularism, when it's established.
Let me finish this. But I think the solution should.
He just updated it.
Okay. Maybe I'm misunderstanding it. I will highlight the update, but let me just finish one sentence. The solution to that should be solution to the bad idea spreading is for us to do double down and spreading secularism and Enlightenment values. So
Yeah.
Alex is clarifying. Alex is saying, I'm not talking about expression of ideas, but practice.
Exactly.
Again,
yeah.
again, practice, even practice, if it doesn't violate any, like if it's not harming any, if it's not a direct violation of rules that are there to avoid harm, like if it's a practice, like what kind of practice? It depends on the practice. Like if people praying as a practice, that should be allowed. Again, expression of religious views should completely be free. Again, so it really depends on what.
We have 1 minute. Yeah. We have 1 minute left, so I want to get into Mars's question.
Yeah,
and again, Alex is saying he's not talking about silencing. I think he's talking about officially. Okay, so let's look at Mars's question because it's really good. Saying if Biden gets elected with respect to the current times, ideally, could he now take a similar stance to Macron? Didn't Obama try it once but had to back off because of the blowback? I think that what happened when Macron got elected is in the US, you got Trump. Over there, we got Macron. Macron ended up here. Macron is a very similar guy to Obama and Biden. Okay, and he ended up here and he ended up making this stance. This did not happen with the whole Trump thing. I think it'll take some time. In the US, the whole Islam thing is actually a lot more sensitive because of the 4 years of Trump. So it might take a little bit longer. But I know that they have the same position. They all have the same position. Obama's talked about it. He's talked to journalists like Jeffrey Goldberg about it before too. So they have the same position. It's just a matter of how they bring it out to the public. I hope that they do.
Yeah, and also, Alex, thank you for the clarification. Sorry if I misunderstood. I used your comment as an excuse to address something else, even if you meant something else. But thank you for clarifying your views. Oh, yeah, but again, I need to respond to this. Sorry. Alex, you say not praying, but e.g. misogyny. Again, I do think like misogyny, if it's not coming from government, if it's from misogyny, should not be banned, right? It should be fought against. Again, maybe I'm misunderstanding you, and maybe we just disagree, which is okay. I don't think like we should, like if people say like, are you free to be, like, should people be free to be misogynist? Yeah, of course they should. We should. There are other ways that we could fight it. Again, I'm not saying, even if you mean something else, I'm just using it as a way to.
So I'm going to take Alex's side on this. I think the way that I'm interpreting it, Alex, is I think you're talking about religious freedom, becoming overwhelming the secularism tenets as they are officially in the government. When that happens and you have a choice between, okay, we've got religious freedom, should we allow people to discriminate against gays because they're Christians, and versus secularism where we shouldn't do that, religion should be secondary, then it should be the latter. I mean that's the way that I'm interpreting what you're saying, but
also
I may be wrong too.
Sometimes some people, when they say not allowed, they don't mean like government should stop it. Sometimes when people say something should not be allowed, that means that we should not sit idly by and let it just grow. Like we need to do activism against it, right? So
That's
it really
right.
also sometimes what it means by not allowed. Okay, but again, Alex, I didn't mean. I know I might be misrepresenting you. I probably am, but I use it as an excuse to say a few other things as well. But I really appreciate your comments, especially because of above earlier you said "Bravo, Armain." I don't know what that was in reference to, but I appreciate that. All right, and guys, the people in the live chat, thank you so much for your patronage. You guys are helping us keep the lights on and making sure that we have these shows coming. So thank you for your support. If you're not a patron and if you're not struggling financially, please link in the description, consider becoming a patron. But if you are struggling financially, do not become a patron. Do not even consider it. But go ahead.
We have an upcoming episode coming up on sex and religion, so that's going to be actually really interesting. So we actually haven't talked about that. We never actually discussed that. I had a whole episode on like sexual repression, religion. So I think that's going to be really interesting. All right, everybody. Thank you very much. Okay, yeah, Alex, you're confirming you do mean government. So yeah, thank you. And I completely agree with you. Again, free us. Susanna saying free the secular jihadist Twitter. They have suspended these accounts, and I don't know why anybody would have a problem with us, Armin. Why does anybody ever have a problem with us?
Oh, we're not hurting him. We're just expressing our ideas, guys.
Great people. All we're trying to do is be best. We just want to be best. Hashtag.
You just want to. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do when the Trump administration is over?
I don't know. I am dreading it. I've been watching these videos of Trump and him. He's becoming even more and more unhinged now. It's so entertaining. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Oh, so you're gonna.
I'm actually gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss it.
All right, guys. Be best. Bye.
Be best.
The secular jihadists have been made possible thanks to the Illuminati and the covert support of Israel and the CIA. That's what we have been told, but we haven't received our checks yet. If you like what we do, please support us. Share the podcast with your friends. Write and tweet us with topic and guest suggestions. Or head over to secularjihadist.com and give $1 or more for exclusive access to live video. Have your questions read and answered on the air, and more. Till next time, may the flying spaghetti monster be with you.